Hey everyone, Sam Signorelli, H1 Fencing. Welcome back to Can Haz Armory. Been a long time. Today I want to get to one that I've been trying to get to, haven't had a chance to do it recently, which is recabling a floor reel. I have a Favero reel that belongs to Golubetsky Fencing Center with a short cable, and I'll show you how to redo that. Right back. Okay, so here's the reel. The problem with this reel is that in the years since I sold it to GFC, it has had a lot of repairs done. Obviously, the cable guide, the string relief has been chewed up, and the cable's gotten short. And it's a little too short to reach, about 15 meters at this point, which is too short. It needs to be 20 to make sure you have enough room so you don't run it out. And so I'm going to repair this. The first thing I'm going to do is detension the spring. Easy way to do that is simply to cut this cable right here. I'm going to toss the whole thing, doesn't matter. So here we go. And that wonderful sound you're going to hear is the cable slapping inside the reel. Doesn't do anything. And now the spring is completely de-attentioned. And it's safe for me to open it up and look at the inside here. The cable comes in rolls of 20 meters, so you're putting that on. So the first thing I'm going to do is open the casing and get the rest of the cable out. Hang on a second here. Okay, I see the lid's off. First thing I'm going to do is look and make sure this guide is in good shape. I don't feel any holes being torn in it, so that's not chewed up yet. The brake pad moves smoothly. Take the cable out, find the cable. This will be pulled off. Just pull it off. You see how it's coming off easily. It's all going to get thrown away. This is probably the... No, it's probably the web. Okay, now it's run out, but if you look at the other side here, we have a little clamp. And this is a strain relief clamp, so if it runs out, it doesn't jerk. This is not entirely effective. I will tell you a short story about it when I get to this point. I'm going to undo this cable here and pull it up, and then I can undo the solder pins here and get these wires off. So hang on a sec, I'll do that. Actually, I'll show it to you. So this is held in by a single bolt coming from the bottom, held in by a nut, and what I'm going to do is take a small vice grip and clamp it there. I don't want it that way. I'm not going to do the whole thing because I don't want to lose the nut inside the drum. Sometimes it's stuck down and got to pry it loose. There it goes. Now it's a little looser. Up a little more. That should do. There it pops to the side. Now the cable's free. So I'm going to cut the rest of this free here so I can pull that out. Okay, and then I'll move this around to the side and unsolder that so you can see what goes on here. And there we are. Stand by to get my soldering iron out. Hang on. Hopefully this is going to be easy to see. I'm kind of blocking light a bit. But this is the circuit board that's inside the reel. And what I have to do is have to desolder these wires so I can get the rest of the cable out. So note the order of the wires. Here is green, brown, and white. You have to remember that. Or I'd say it's George versus W, going that way. Get my little soldering iron here and get done first here. There's that one done. Green, brown, white. That's gone. I also want to add a little solder onto those pads because some came up. Gotta be careful because the pad is very, very small here, and Favero didn't give a lot of spacing, which I wish I had. One of the few real flaws in these on these reels, as far as I'm concerned. Just a little bit more solder on it. Okay, because sometimes it come up with the cable. So next, I'm going to prep the cable to be installed onto this. And hang on a second. Okay, so the next step is to prep the cable. I've already unwound the cable from its pack, so it's nice and it's straightened out. And I have to first strip it off, so I've already done that. I did this in an earlier video. This is the Kevlar strain relief that is in the Favero reel cable. I don't need that up here, so I'm going to cut it away. leaving the exposed wires. Okay, that's gone. Then I'm going to strip these and tin the wires so they'll better adhere to the pads. Long. You see, you don't really need all that much stripped away. Have my reposition the camera and my helping hands so you can see the tinning. Stand by a second. Okay, so I've got my wires, my helping hands here, so I can solder it on. All I'm going to do is get my soldering iron going, lay it under the wire so it heats up, put the solder on top of it. So first make sure the solder doesn't actually melt here. And there it goes. Okay, the iron's hot enough. Is the wire hot? Okay, hang on a second. I want the wire to spread out. Make sure it's not gonna contact something else. There it goes. Get hot enough for the wire to flow, or the solder to flow rather. And the third one. I was holding it still is the hardest part. So those wires are tinned now, and that means when I put them on the circuit board, that the solder, not only the solder on the circuit board will flow, but also solder on these will flow and it'll blend together and make a better joint. So I'll reset for that. Hang on a second. Say before I solder down here, I gotta put the wire through. So this little grommet is the hole inside the drum. I'm gonna put the wire through there. Hard when I can't see it. Hang on a second. There he goes. It's all through. Now, I had mentioned a strain relief knot. I'm going to tie a knot in the cable so it sits right here on the grommet. The reason I want that is because this clamp doesn't always do the job to hold things in place. The story is this. I'm working Nationals 2012 in Anaheim, and we were doing it was near the end of my time there. We were working the first half of the event. And one of the fencers was in a DE on the semifinal strip and was getting his head handed to him very, very badly. He got pissed off and he flushed his opponent, ran past the end line, kept going across the gap, jumped the barrier into the next pod. And what happened was, because only held by this clamp, he ran the cable out, the cable jerked out and destroyed the circuit board. So that reel was down for the rest of the tournament. If it had been a string relief knot there, that probably would not have happened. It would have dragged the reel, but it probably wouldn't have broke the circuit board. So that's why I put the relief knot there. Now I can put the clamp back on it. There's that. And then we'll simply have two means of protecting the circuit board. Yeah, it's kind of firm. Now it's not going to go anywhere. So now I got to solder this on, and it's a matter of bada boom. So let me reposition the camera again. Stand by. Okay, so I repositioned the knot bit. It was a little long here. Didn't cable quite that long. So here we go with this. I'm going to put on. I'm simply going to lay on the soldering iron onto the pad. It'll melt the solder on the tinning onto the pad, hold it in place. And where's George was W, so white's going to go first back here. Make sure these two aren't going to get caught. There you are. There it goes. Okay, that's good. And then brown. hard doing this left-handed. I'm a right-handed guy, and for the sake of the camera, I go left with the soldering iron. Okay, that's all in. Now, one more thing I gotta do here, because the spacing is so tight, I want to make sure I don't have any shorting between these panels. So I'll simply take a screwdriver and run it between the pads, so it should separate any contact between those lines there. And that is how you do the circuit board. I'll put the casing back on after. But one more thing here, so hang on a second. Okay, so next I need to feed the cable through the guide here so I can wind the reel up. So I'm going to take the front end here, put it through that way. Before I pull the rest of it though, I'm going to tie a knot in the front, so when I start winding the cable up, or winding the reel up rather, it doesn't get pulled back through and lose everything. So now it's done, it pulls through. Okay, so now it's on. Now I got to wind the reel up. Now, Favero reel even says here between 9 and 12 winds. So what I'm going to do, because the spring needs to be barely wound up, I'm going to make it easy on myself. I'm going to wind this thing up to low and let it pull the cable in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I'll let it retract and pull the cable in. And see, that's what I should not have done. So if you let go of it, this happens, and then it gets really loose. What happened was I lost grip on the cable. So what happens is it gets really loose, and that contributes to a lot of tangles. In fact, if your reel is in any cable reel is pulling out and gets jammed, what has probably happened is it's gotten a little loose, and the cables come not quite this loose, but loose enough, and it wraps around itself and jams up. Easy way to fix that is simply to open the reel up and then find where the tangle is and untangle. So that was a trick on my part, but good for you to see. See, I held on for that time. So once again, I'm holding on to the cable to control it going in, make sure it doesn't bounce back as the spring did there. Okay. Now this is still a little too much, so I want to take a wrap off and see what happens. When I do this, I want the tension to be pretty much gone when it comes to the end of the cable. One more, I think, will do it. Okay, so now the cable is wound all the way up. Here's the front end, went up all the way up. It's detension. Now I'm going to retension the cable with. I tend to put 11 turns on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Boom. Now it is fully tensioned. However, sometimes the cable gets a little loose on this in the nature of what's going on. So I'm going to pull the whole cable out and then let it retract again. It'll set properly on the drum. So here we go. Also, when I do that, I'm making sure that that doesn't happen. That the cable does not does come all the way out, full 20 meters, before the springs bottom out. The springs are going to wind up so far, and when they stop, the drum's not moving. You want to make sure the whole cable's out before the springs bottom out. We have 10 rolls in the cable now because of that little pop out. Should not be a problem. I can see it's okay. There it is. So now it's all the way out. Cable spring's not. The spring is just about tight enough, and now I'm going to let it retract, and I can control the going in there since the brake's not very effective right now. A little bit of tangling here. But for the most part, the cable's pretty tight. Now the brake will do its job, so I'll put the lid back on and I'll do the front end, so stand by. Okay, so now the lid's back on, and I decided to pull the cable all the way out again and let it retract by itself. Let the brake, so I can test the brake. I'll let go of the cable, and you hear the little thunk. That's the brake coming up, hitting the underside of the wheel to slow it down. There we go. There's the thunk. Retracting at a good, relatively slow speed. Just winding it naturally. And there we go. So now I can put another string relief knot in this, or rather stop knot. So I have room to work. Now I have about 6 feet of cable of slack. Take this knot out, and I can start putting the plug head on. Hang on a second. So the cable is back on. Now I'm going to put the front end on. But this is back, has been a bit chewed up. This cable here, whose purpose is to protect the main jacket from the spring, is a bit chewed. I'm going to put a new one on. So here is the new cable. And 3 things I'm going to put on. Number 1, I'm going to put on a rubber grommet. This purpose is so it hits the front of the guide, and the spring can't get stuck in the guide because it stops it. So that's going to go on that there. Then I'm going to put the spring on. Make sure the spring has this little tab right here. Has to go forward because that engages the casing of the plug head to keep the spring in place. So let's get through the hardest part because it has a tendency to catch the spring. So I'll do that way first. I will put on the new cable protector guide. That goes on. Okay, I'm going to pull it back a bit. Now put the spring on it. As I drop the spring, yes indeed, gravity does in fact work. Okay, so spring's on, goes on a little bit easier. Now I can push it on away. And actually did it wrong. The spring, well, that's right. Okay. Now it's on. I'm going to go and strip this wire the same way I did before to expose the wires. I'm going to do the same tinning process I did on this end as I did on the other end because we have the circuit board on this to go on to. So give me back, stand by, and I'll come back with that. Okay, so we're done here. I have stripped and tinned the new wires, as I said I was going to. Now we got to do the other ones. Now these are on little solder pads right behind the ports here, and the order on this one is different than the order it was in the on the circuit board. I don't know why Favero does that. This is actually George W. Bush, green, white, brown. So I'm going to take it off. Again, doing it left-handed, which is really weird for me. It ain't right. Where'd my solder go? There it is. All right. So here we go with left-handed. Wait, it warmed a little bit. There it goes. Okay. Okay, and that's trash. And again, put more solder on because some did come up with the wire. Just add a little more onto it. Okay, and then I have my new wire ready to go with it again. This is George W. Bush. There goes. Oops, don't need Bush too, just need George. There he goes. Okay, so I have George. And that's on. Oops. And W. And Bush. So much easier when I'm doing it right-handed. I know something you don't know. I'm not left-handed. So everything's down. And now it's a matter of hooking it to my test box and making sure I have everything correct. There's no shorts. And we'll get to that next. Hang on a second. Okay, so I've got my parts here. I have my test box, which unfortunately I can't get the camera on it. I have a 3-meter test box. If you can look at it real quick here. And there it is. So each of those meters is for one line. And I'm going to plug, I have one cable plugged in the back of the reel, another cable plugged the other side of the box. I'm going to plug this together, and I'll check and make sure all the lines are consistent and are got continuity. And I have continuity in all the lines, and wiggling this, I see no flicker in the meters. So now I know all the lines are correct, but I also want to make sure I'm not going to short when I pull the cable. And for that, I need to hook up to my laptop with my virtual scoring machine. So hang on for that after I reassemble the cable housing. Before I do that, I forgot to tell you how to put the cable housing back together. So we have this extra jacket. I'm going to pull it up to the top here and tie a knot, another strain relief knot. For the same reason, we have the knot elsewhere. So if it gets jerked, it doesn't break the solder joints and break the cable inside. So I have the knot right up near the end here. Taking my cable housing to pick the bottom of it. Or my screwdriver. My little power screwdriver. I'm going to put the clamp that was in this just a couple, just so it bites into it, holds it in place on both sides of that. That way I can pull this back all the way so the string relief knot sits against the clamp, and then I can tighten it down. So the clamp's down. Now before I put anything else on, I need to pull up the spring and the little ball. So the spring first. Spring comes up, and there should be a little hole in the back here, sometimes on the top, where the little tip engages into. So it goes in there. Now it's going to actually go into that. Now hold that little depression. That'll help hold the spring in place when I finish putting it together. So I'll put put everything back where it belongs. Put the top case on. Put the screws in. Hold together. I always do the back end first to make sure that the spring stays in place. Okay, now the spring's in place. Put the retaining bail on to get out of the way. Then I put on the D-ring clip. It's a fairly straightforward process. It's a lot easier than Ullman, which has a million screws. Leon Paul, which is a nightmare to work on. Favero is so much easier. There's one thing about Favero that's much less easy than an Ullman, which replacing the spring. Hopefully, if I have to do that again, I'll show you that one. One of the few times Ullman's actually easier to work on. Okay, there's that. Okay, so now the head's assembled, but I still have to work. Oops, it popped out, so I missed that. Sometimes it happens. So I'm going to take it back apart, put it back together, and I'll come back for the rest of this. Hang on. Okay, got it fixed. It kept popping out. Now, what I'm going to do is, when we had the little rubber grommet on, the grommet slips over. Here, the right side slips over this, which helps hold it in place. I'm going to push that through. There it goes. Pull it up against the spring. And now, when it hits the cable guide, this will stop it retracting, but also will keep that spring from catching in the guide if the guide gets chewed up, which happens with the stretching frequency. So I'm going to finish retracting this, and I'll hook my VSM up, and we'll do the test I was talking about, and we'll be right back. Okay, now to test that, I've got my VSM set up. I've got the floor reel plugged into my VSM box. That one is a pair of jumpers that closes the circuit off in BC. This is the other one, as if you're plugged into the fencer. I'm going to pull one of these pins, and just to test, make sure the circuit works properly. So I pull one of them, and we have it off target left side. Okay, so now it's plugged in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the cable as if it's somebody pulling on it. And if there's a problem, like the circuit opens up, it'll show. And if it's grounding, it should show them there's a little yellow light there. So I'm going to pull it. So there is no grounding on it. I'm going to pull the pin again. There you go. And there you go. And one more check real quick. We're going to put it on epee. I'm going to short on the front end. I'm going to short AB. There we go. And there we are. So now it works perfectly fine. And the reel is ready to go back into service. That's how you recable a Favero floor reel. As always, happy armoring.